Welcome back to the Mettle podcast, and today's episode has me switching gears. Thus far, most of my interviews have been with coaches, but today I want to start talking to some athletes, one athlete in particular. I plan to do a few coming up, and the reason is that most of the information that I've gained from around athletes and mental toughness has been from working with the athletes themselves. And as you know, or perhaps you don't know, I'm a mental coach that works primarily with athletes, and I coach athletes for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is because I have always been involved in athletics. I love athletics. I think it's so useful for development and beyond athletics. I played multiple sports in high school and played a little bit of college basketball. I coached for years at the junior high and high school level, boys and girls. And I also worked as an athletic director, and I also raised two successful high school athletes, and my son still plays some Division II basketball. So I love athletics, and it's my favorite. So working with athletes was an easy decision for me when I decided that I wanted to become a certified coach. And if you don't know why I made the decision to become a certified coach, well, it's because you either don't know me or I just haven't shared it much on this podcast outside, the intro when I mention it and then on the first episode. But I think it bears repeating here. While I was working as an athletic director during the pandemic, I was trying to survive that, but I also survived cancer, and only to have it be followed up with an ischemic stroke. And learning how to read again and speak again is not something that I would recommend to anyone. It's not fun. It's why you'll still hear me from time to time, catch on words and stutter, things like that, especially when I get tired or I'm really thinking about something. And it used to bother me, and it still does bother me some, but I let it go. And so I wouldn't recommend having to do that. But also, it turned out to be such a really great situation for me once I had to get through it, because it ripped my ego down to the studs and just completely had to re-renovate myself and kind of restart. And that really just it led me to go find some therapy and get some help to get through it. And that's when I learned about some positive psychology. And positive psychology is one of the building blocks of professional coaching or, life coaching, mental coaching, whatever. It's a big part of it, that positive psychology. And I liked it so much that's why I decided to go be a coach. And of course, since I said I like athletes, that's who I decided who I wanted to work with. And I just realized I really wanted to be able to help athletes overcome the adversity and just build the confidence that they need. And you don't have to, you don't have to have gone through what I've gone through to need to feel anxiety and to feel pressure and want to build confidence. I knew that a lot of the things that I felt in my recovery was a lot of the things that I feel athletes feel. And again, it's not the same, but it is the same in a person's head and a person's mind. If they're anxious and very worried about things, they need some help to get out of it. So that was my goal. And my guest today is one of the first athletes that I ever worked with. And it wasn't because he reached out to me, but it was because I needed to get going and I needed some clients, and I had to do some reaching out to kind of talk about what I was going to do. And I knew him previously, and I knew his family, and I knew that they were going to be the kind of people that would understand what I was trying to do and how I was trying to help. And also because I knew this young man was either facing an uphill battle or was about to be facing an uphill battle. And I thought this would be a great situation for me to help him. So my guest his name is JJ Guedet, and he was a he's a football player. He's an offensive lineman. And he, in 2019, in January of 2019, and we'll get into this story a little bit more, but I'm going to give a little bit of his accolades here. So he played at Washington High School in Central Illinois, and he enrolled in Minnesota to sign up to play for the Golden Gophers. He had a lot, he's a very highly sought after recruit in high school. He was IHSA All-State Honors in 2018. He was named to the Rivals 20th Annual All-State Team, Journal Star 2017 All-Area Honors, Mid-Illini All-Conference in 2018 and 17, two-time Academic All-State honoree, and his senior year led his team to an 11-1 record and a number 1 state ranking at one point. A consensus 3-star recruit, and at one point in high school was ranked 49th out of all offensive tackles by a specific website. Look, so he very, very sought after recruit, and despite all of that, I knew that offensive linemen don't walk into a Big Ten school and start playing every day. There's just too much knowledge and around being an offensive lineman that you just don't have a kid that comes in and plays, even if they are physically ready, which they really aren't going to be ready physically as an offensive lineman. They can't just step in and play and know the system and just be ready. Some of the skill positions in college, a kid can have enough athleticism. If they're fast enough, they jump enough, they've got a good arm, things like that. Sometimes they can get around it. But linemen, they're created. They have to have the body, but they get created with a lot of gym work and a lot of class work. And I knew JJ would be facing a lot of adversity, and I just wanted to help. And little did I know, once I started, a little after I started working with him, he faced a very serious season-ending injury. And so, just in the, waiting for your turn and then starting to get your turn and then have an injury, he's just faced a lot of adversity, and I've really helped him do some of that. I mean, this kid puts work in like you wouldn't believe, but I was there to help him a little bit. Long story short, I got to help him through some very tough situations and give him some mental tools that would really help him out. And I hope that I believe I have, but it all remains to be seen. But I believe I've put him in a good position. He and I together and all the people helping him, but I think he's in a good position to have a couple really impactful years for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and I'm excited for him. He's excited for it. He's a very intelligent and driven young man, so you'll pick up on that in the interview. So I'm really excited to have him on here. So stick around and hear about how important it is for a mindset, to have the right mindset when you're this stud athlete in high school that steps into the very real world of the Big Ten. So stick around. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mettle Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. The Mental Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. Today's episode of the Mental Podcast, we are answering the question, what mindset do athletes need to have when going from being a high school athlete to a Big Ten athlete? And today on the podcast. I've got a special guest named JJ Guedet. He's an offensive lineman with the Minnesota Golden Gophers football team, and I am thrilled to have him here. And I'll let him introduce himself a little bit and tell you about his accolades and where he's at, and I'll talk about a little bit about our background. But I want him to introduce himself, and thanks for being here, JJ.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Like you said, my name is JJ Guedet, offensive lineman from Minnesota. I've been with the football team for 4 years here. This is the start of my 5th year. I'm from Washington, Illinois, where I played football and basketball in high school. Matt and I have known each other for a while, kind of lived in the same area, and that's kind of how we got connected at the start. I major in healthcare services, healthcare management. So I just finished my bachelor's in that, and I'm going to start a master's program here coming up in the fall.
Hey, congrats on that.
Thank you. Mom was very excited about that one.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I hadn't even thought about this, about a little bit about how long we've known each other. And JJ here was one of my first coaching clients, and he didn't reach out to me. I reached out to him. I was starting to get into this, and I know his dad, JJ Senior, and I just said, hey, I'm looking into getting into this coaching athletes, mental coaching for athletes stuff, and at this point, JJ was a freshman going into his freshman year at Minnesota, I believe, or just so. After. I think
it was either before or right after.
And I knew that. I mean, he'd been the stud at Washington, Illinois, which is a great football program, but it's still on the smaller side as far as some. Foot in Illinois, and it's what division are you guys?
We're traditionally 5A, but my year we got moved up to 6A.
Okay, so big, but it's there's still 8A. So, but I knew he was facing a big jump in going from Washington, Illinois to the campus at Minnesota, and not only that, I knew you were going to redshirt, which is the whole nother thing to deal with. So I actually reached out to him, and so I've been coaching JJ for a while now, and we'll talk about that too. But I can tell you one of the first memories I have of JJ is when I was a junior high basketball coach, and his dad was the basketball coach, and I had a game plan. I was undersized and underwhelmed, but I had a game plan, and I can remember that my guys went up 12-11 with like 3 minutes left in the game, right? And JJ being the big center, and he comes down and hits a three to put them up, and we couldn't respond to that, but it was a big time shot by a player, and it was I still really haven't forgiven you for that, but we probably would have lost the next game, and you guys went on to win the state championship, so I'll give you that one. But that's where I know JJ from. So
yeah, that was a great game. A lot of fun. We have a lot of good memories from that game, and I know it's for you guys, but we had
I still have the. I mean, nobody else held you to quite that few points. Nowhere close.
Most defensive side of the game. I think the next closest was the semifinals for the state tournament. We played. I can't remember what town they're from, but they're a red team, and the final score ended up being like 25-22 or something. So, super close game.
Yeah, I think ours ended up being 15-11 or something like that.
Something super low.
Yeah, I remember the first time I played you guys that year, and after the game, your dad came up, and my guys left. We left by 20, and I remember your dad coming up and saying, he goes, I'm so impressed with your guys. You guys play so hard. You're so tough. And when I'm like, we lost by 20, and he's like, no, we usually win by a lot more than that. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll take it.
In our defense, we had two guys that were older, who got held back here and ended up playing with us. So that kind of helped us out a little bit. They're a little bit more physically mature, and
which I like to say that in junior high, state championships are awarded to the team with the most mustaches, and that
was true for us.
It's very true. It was very true for you guys. But we'll get in. Let's talk a little football here, and I want to again the theme today is what mindset do you need to have? If let's say we're talking to a coach. This podcast is geared mostly for coaches, but I assume athletes will listen as well. But what sort of mindset do you need to have going into that first year of college, especially, you're going to the Power Five, it's a big jump. What sort of mindset did you have? What do you need to have?
Yeah. So it's very different. We'll talk about schedule first, because that's a big part of it. High school, junior high, Little League, everything like that is, you have typically practices are after school. You have, your whole school day planned out. You're in class for, 8 hours a day, and then you have a 2 or 3 hour practice after, maybe some weightlifting. The main difference is when you get to college, it's kind of on you. You have people who can help you schedule your classes. We have specific academic counselors who can help us make sure that we fall within the time constraints that we need. You have all of your classes that you have to have for your major, everything to make sure you're eligible. But it's not just 8 hours a day. You also have a lot more free time. For football, we have in the spring, workouts are after 2:15, and everything before that is class. But you're not going to spend the whole time at class, right? So for my last semester, I had 3 online classes and 1 class that met every other week. So I had all the free time in the world. You can, we're in spring ball, so I'm watching film. I go into the weight room, I stretch with my strength coach. There's just so many different things that you can do now that you weren't able to do before, because you're not sitting in a class all day.
Now, when you say spring ball, you actually started there in the spring, correct?
I did. I came early. So I graduated after December of 2019 or 2018, sorry. And then January 16th of 2019, I moved in here at Minnesota. So you finished high school in 3.5 years, right? I did.
And then Happy New Year. And how old were you at the time? 18?
17.
17. And here you go. We're throwing you to the wolves, so to speak. Yeah.
Big change.
Yeah,
Especially
big change.
We had signed paperwork for all of this, living situation, cost of attendance, all this stuff that we have to do with football. I couldn't sign half of it because I'm still a minor. I had to call my parents and be like, hey, I need a picture of your signature saying that I can do this and I can put it on this paper so I can actually do all the stuff I have to.
Yeah. And what was your mood like as you're doing all that? I mean, are you gung ho, or are you nervous, or a little bit of both, or?
Bit of both. It's very fun to be living on your own. It's nice. You just feel a little bit not freer. My parents were great, and I never had a ton of rules, and they weren't super strict, but you can kind of do what you want to do. But you have to learn a balance. If you don't clean your room, you're just going to have a mess everywhere. So you start to learn that by yourself. And I know your parents tell you all the time, but it's truly on you to do it.
Yeah.
But part of it is a little bit nervous, especially because I'm 6.5 hours away from my family.
Yeah.
If I need anything, they can't be there in 5 minutes. So you have to, you grow up a lot more.
Yeah.
A bit more responsibility. Even if you think you're already responsible, it goes up another step and you have to learn even more. Yeah.
So speaking of growing up, that 17-year-old that walked into the weight room the first day at I'm sure you guys have a phenomenal weight facility, right?
Yeah.
What's your height and weight at the time?
My height, I wish I had it. We just got these sheets that had them. I think I was somewhere around 6'5" and 3/4 ish, and about 300 pounds.
Okay.
And now it is 6'6.5" and 310, roughly.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not really that big of a change on the weight, then, is it?
Not on the number, but we look at body mass and fat content versus muscle, and that has changed a lot more than just the number of how heavy I am and how big I am.
Right. So what was that first day you going into the weight room, that 17-year-old kid like mixing up with the other linemen? What's that like?
So we actually, the guys who come early, we have I think they just call them newcomer lifts, and it was all of the guys who came in that class lifting. So everyone who came in and arrived on campus in, January of 2019, we lifted together. There was about 12 of us. We lifted together for about 2 weeks before we got put in with the whole team, just to kind of teach us what's going on, how we're going to do stuff as a team, what the different lifts are, because they do a lot of different stuff than what most kids did in high school. We also, one of our strength coaches has a very, very heavy accent, so we had to learn how to listen to him. Half the time we couldn't tell what he was saying.
What accent's that?
Boston.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thick. So
thick, yeah.
That was totally different. But just
that's funny.
Kind of learning how they all do it. They taught us the stretches before we did stuff. So they're very thorough with how we do stuff, but just making sure. And then when we finally got into lift with the team, every guy is paired up with, 2 or 3 older guys. So I was paired up with 2 older offensive linemen and then an older defensive lineman, just to, as we kind of start getting into it, make sure we know what we're doing, but we don't have a coach there with us the whole time. So,
yeah. So when was the first time that you were like, I am not in Washington anymore? When was the first time you got that feeling?
For football or for living? I think those were two different things.
Let's go living first.
Living was probably when my parents left, right?
Just instantly.
Oh yeah, immediately. Dropped us off and moved in. I think we went out and had lunch, and then I came back to my apartment where I was now living, and they left to go back to Washington. And I was like, well, now what do I do? I'm just I don't know what to do. And I live with 3 other guys who I don't know in a big city, which, if you don't know, Washington is a smaller farm type town, and Minneapolis is obviously not. So that was a huge adjustment, which really I wouldn't say solidified itself until after that first spring. That was when I started to kind of, I think, be more responsible and understand that I have to actually take care of my stuff. Football, I would say it was that first or second spring practice, and then finally the spring game that year. Like we already talked about, I'm big, but going against guys who have been in a program for 4 or 5 years is very challenging. In the spring game, I ended up going against Carter Coughlin and Kamal Martin and Sam Renner. All 3 went to the NFL, and all 3 had a sack on me in the first 5 plays of the spring game. So that was a really big eye-opening. I'm like, oh, these guys are actually really good. I'm getting my ass kicked right now. So but I mean, I've gone back and watched that film and looked at it over the years, and just to see how far I've changed and how far I've come. And it's nice just to know the progress is going.
Yeah. So there's as you mentioned, you've been there for 4 years now. Of course you had the COVID year, which is, and Holton Extra and all that, but it's talk about the growth. And like, I know from working with you, like, we have had a lot of conversations about it has to be a growth mindset. Yeah,
when I first came in, that first semester was by far my worst. You get homesick, adjusting to the new schedule and things like that. I think I've always been a fairly responsible kid, but that first semester really tested that. I'd have on my homework, but it wasn't due until, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever. And I wouldn't do it until the day before. And that was, it really started to pile up, and it got to a point where it seemed almost unbearable. And I can feel like it now, especially this last semester, like all of my homework was due on the same day. and I didn't have a ton of classes that I had to go to, so I could plan out, I'm going to work on this on Monday, I'm going to do this on Tuesday, I got this on Wednesday, I'll focus on football on Thursday. There's just a lot of things that go on. And then, your body matures. You work out with a professional strength team,
Right.
a whole team and nutrition. They just work on us all the time. So, the only way that you aren't going to physically mature is if you don't want to. It's impossible to not. They make it so regimented and uniform for you that you literally cannot change unless you don't want to.
And that's an interesting point. I'm going to take a break here, but I'm going to ask you, all that said, I'm certain that there are guys that don't grow. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where mental mettle coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mettle Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mettle Coaching and see them excel. The Mental Mettle Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. So as you mentioned, a Division I Big Ten university is going to, let's be honest, you are an investment, right? And they're going to do everything they can to get the biggest ROI out of that investment. And they're going to put in, like you said, world-class trainers, nutritionists, all that. And you mentioned that the only way you're going to not grow is if you don't want to, and we don't need names, but there are some people that still struggle with that, aren't there?
I'm sure there are. Like I talked about, my freshman year was rough. Coming in is always going to be difficult. There are different levels of maturity, and some guys are ready to play right away. Some guys aren't. If you get a really good recruit who's just athletically gifted, chances are they're going to play. Now they also have to do the right things off the field. They have to have good grades. They have to know the playbook. But on the physical side, they're more likely to play. At Minnesota, we are not typically what people would call a blue blood program. We're not
right.
Michigan. We're not Ohio State. We're not Alabama. We're not bringing in 5-star recruits every year. I actually don't think we have any 5-star recruits. So we take a lot of guys who either aren't physically ready yet, aren't mentally ready, whatever. They weren't that high of a recruit like that to go to one of those places, and we develop them to be ready. There's differences of when guys will be ready and when they aren't. If somebody doesn't care, though, there's not many that truly don't care that make it. You won't be around. You're gonna hate it because you have to do so much stuff. You're gonna get burnt out. We have meetings constantly. We're watching film. We're working on stuff. You have workouts, runs. It's so much stuff that if you don't love it, I don't think you can make it.
Right, and that was going to be my next question. It feels like, you have to love it.
You truly do. Most time, like right now, we're on break, so we don't have practices and film and all that stuff. But there's still there's guys here right now on campus. I was working out with a couple of them yesterday. You go and do individual drills. It's what you make out of it. It's a great time. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about some of the ups and downs that you and I talked before we got on. You mentioned that, it's, as I mentioned, I've been coaching you for a little bit and I've been working, so I know the story. But it's been, you've been there 4 years, but it's been an absolute grind for you.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a rocky road.
Yeah.
Obviously, COVID is the first thing that comes to mind. And nobody really saw that coming. Kind of came out of left field and really messed up a lot of things in our country and in the world. But we played the season. I think we only ended up having 7 games that season, which was very strange with how we had to deal with, CDC had regulations that we had to follow. The NCAA had regulations we had to follow. The University of Minnesota board made policies and things that we had to do. So our whole schedule and world really was flipped upside down by that. Then last year I ended up having an injury. Didn't see it coming. Pretty much a season-ending injury, so I was out for the whole year. And finally back and 100%. So that was a very long journey that we have been through. You helped me a lot with the coaching with that, but that was something else that not really in my plan when I got here. So
yeah, when you say it, you didn't, not that people see injuries coming, but we're talking about like you weren't even playing, right?
No, I didn't practice in the spring. I was out. I ended up having 2 surgeries for it. And the second one, I didn't find out about until 2 days before it was happening.
Right.
Just stuff, complications, things that happened out of the blue that we didn't see and ended up having to get through.
Yeah. So at what point do you ever feel like you're talking about having to love it, right?
Yeah.
Like at any point at that injury and that recovery, was it like, it's hard to love it when that's the case?
Yes and no. I think you have a very skewed perspective when you're out. A lot of the frustration came with the fact that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. The whole time that I was out, I was, I talked to my trainers or I talked to our strength staff, like, all right, well, I feel really good and I want to go do more because I feel like I can. Like, you need to calm down. You need to take it slow. It's a medical process of coming back, and I was not wanting to be patient with it.
Right.
I obviously had to, because that's the health side of it. But when you watch your team go practice and you can't do anything, that was the worst part.
Yeah. I can remember having a session or two with you right after the injury, and we really focused on. I love talking about that circle of control and you can't play, you can't practice, you can't lift, you couldn't do much of anything, right?
No. So I had 2 weeks, I had a week after the injury before the surgery where I did literally nothing. I went to class and I went to meetings and I couldn't practice, I couldn't lift, I couldn't do any of that. And I would hit these benchmarks in my recovery. So I had my surgery, I had to wait, then I would start working out and I had to wait some more. And that was when I get frustrated, is the waiting. So the first one I talked with you, we had our meeting about the circle of control. At another point, I got, really upset about not progressing. And I talked to my parents about it. Then I got further along and I started to do more. And then I had to go talk to my coach because I was just kept looking at what I couldn't do. Instead of, seeing how far I've come. And it truly is a road to recovery, and injuries are difficult because you can't control them.
Right. And then I know that we talked about that circle of control, and we really said, okay, we take everything out of that. People that don't know the exercise, everything that you can't control, we put on the outside, right? And like, which for you was a lot at that point. So we said, what can you do? And I know that if you'd speak to that a little bit, we talked about the intelligence and the knowledge that has to go with being an offensive lineman and how you could actually develop that while you were injured.
Yeah. So I think about most of the things that we talked about on the inside. One, the knowledge and intelligence. Two was attitude. Just trying to be positive through something that really sucked for me to go through. And the other one was just trying to be a good teammate and help my teammates as much as I could. Obviously going through something that takes you out of what you love doing is going to suck. And that I really had to focus on my attitude a lot of days. You know, I'd wake up, and if I wasn't feeling great, I started off not feeling great, but I'd take some time, and especially after this conversation, take some time and maybe talk to my parents or just be by myself and think about how I wanted to be that day, what we had to do, how I could help. With my teammates, I didn't want to be an anchor and just drag everybody down. A lot of the guys who were practicing in that spring ball, especially in my position group, were younger. So we had 2 returning seniors, and everybody else was a sophomore, and 1 junior who ended up coming in later. But trying to help those guys, you know, understand what to do on the field, how you can do stuff off the field to help your practice or your preparation and things like that. But then the knowledge part, that was what I spent most of the time on. Like I can't practice. I could kind of lift, but it was very modified. So I just watched film. A lot of it was me and one of our GAs. So we'd go into we have an offensive line room. We go and watch film, and we'd take a week and go through each concept of our offense. You know, we'd start back with the freshman install with all of the base rules and everything that you learned day one from being there. And we progressed all the way through game film of the last season, going over, you know, blitzes, looks, different things like that. And the more that we did it, the more that I could kind of predict what was coming, and you start to just get a feel for the game. And that showed up this year, this spring now as we start practice. You know, I have the most knowledge and understanding about a defense that I've ever had before. So we're on the field, and me and my guard are next to each other, and we can tell when the defense is going to run a blitz because, you know, hey, the safety shifted over like this, the linebacker walked down. Well, we know it's cover one, and we know what they can do out of that. So being able to take the clues that they give you and things like that makes my job 10 times easier because I know where everybody's going.
Right. And all, you know, probably all helped by you spending more time that you wouldn't have done if you weren't injured. And I know that it's making the best out of a bad situation is definitely a mindset that it's not easy to do though. It's hard, but it's useful. I have a memory of, not to get to too much about of it, but in one of our first sessions, I love asking the question to athletes about when you step on the field, what sort of animal do you feel like, right? Do you remember your answer to that?
I do. I said a bull.
Yeah. And I can remember having that conversation so much, and then us coming back to it, and you're like, all right, so I figured out that I can't just bull rush everybody, right? Like, and I know that we've had enough conversations about this that it took you so much to realize I just can't go and blow and knock everybody down as an offensive lineman in the Big Ten. It took a mindset for you to. Sometimes I need to be patient.
Yeah, it's a very strange idea, especially when people think of an offensive lineman. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say big, strong, slow.
Hmm.
There are a lot of very, very subtle things that happen in the game that just watching, you're not going to know. It's incredible. Like when I was in high school, I'd never crossed my mind. You know, my dad was a linebacker and he played in college, but you don't know anything about offensive line. And every time I
No.
talk, he talks about how strange it is that, you know, there's so much going on in our heads. One thing that I like to think about is, I know we used to talk about the bowl, and I think that's changed a lot. And we haven't had this conversation in a while.
No, I mean, yeah.
But it's a lot more of a balance now. And I don't have an animal in mind, but there's
Maybe we can do a session and we'll talk about that, because it's interesting how and I think that's where, not to go into a commercial here on the mental coaching, but it's not what people think it is. It's being able to take yourself out of yourself and look at yourself, right? And that's I think that's the fun part about it.
And I think something else that's very different is a lot of times the things that really matter about the coaching, you don't find out in the coaching session.
Right.
Like a lot of the things that we've talked about, you've given me a question or an activity to do by myself after the session that oftentimes leads to me understanding it more and having to think about different ways to do things.
Yeah, I can already tell you I'm going to share this podcast with some of the people that ran my training program for coaching, because they'll love what you just said. And that we always say that most of the coaching happens after the session. It's a lot of questions in the time, but if you actually think about it, it starts to really get the wheels spinning and get you thinking in a positive way, certainly. Yep. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Mettle Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where Mental Mettle coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mettle Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mettle Coaching and see them excel. So still back here with JJ Guedet, and I mentioned, in being an offensive lineman for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, I got to ask you about, I know that Coach Fleck I've listened to some of his stuff, and he's really into the mentality stuff. And I know that you mentioned something when you were injured, not being an anchor for your team. And I felt like, I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but I know that you guys' mantra is the row the boat. You got the paddle, you do all this stuff. Talk to me a little bit about that whole metaphor.
So row the boat was created by Coach Fleck. He lost one of his sons when he was very young. And after that, he the way that he describes it, he felt broken. Didn't really know where he was going to go, didn't know what he was going to do, and kind of wanted to do more. So he came up with Row the Boat. It's a never give up lifestyle, and there's 3 parts to row the boat. The first part is the oar. The oar is energy. It's what you do every day. It's how you do it. So when we talk about in football terms, we call it how. Your effort that you apply to anything is your how you do it, how you look doing it. And we want to project, being energized. We have all of these sayings that we have that everybody in the program knows that, this is how we do it. Second part is the boat. The boat is a sacrifice. So you can't do anything worthwhile without sacrifice. And we talk about the more you sacrifice, the bigger your boat gets, and the more people that you can take with you wherever you're going. So we'll use Coach Fleck. He's the one who came up with it. When he started off Row the Boat, it was him and his wife. That was it. Now, I don't even know how many years later. I think it's 8 or 9 years later. There's a whole state, people outside of Minnesota who do row the boat. He's sacrificed. He has built his boat. He's got the Children's Masonic Hospital. They have a foundation that works there. Little kids camps, all of these things where it brings people together and, try to move forward and work through things. And the last part is the compass. The compass is the direction of your life. We describe it as the people that you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself with, people who don't do the right thing, people who are getting in trouble, skipping class, not doing their homework, whatever, trouble with the law, things like that, you're going to end up turning out like that or doing things along those lines. If you surround yourself with successful people and, really smart people who make the right decision, do the right thing, you're going to end up having tendencies that be like that. So all three of those kind of come together to form the base of the culture. We have a lot of things that we talk about in football, phrases that we say, movie clips that we use to illustrate some of these. There's different things that we take from pop culture and things like that we tie into our culture to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about. One of the more notable things that we do is the Holy Grail. That's what we call it. It's from Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Last Crusade. At the end of the movie, they're searching for the Holy Grail. The cup of Jesus Christ that gives immortal life.
Yeah.
The very final part, right when they take the cup and the bad guy ends up drinking from the cup and the knight says, "You have chosen poorly." And
right.
He dies. Indiana Jones goes next and he picks up this, super dirty, ratty looking, terrible, terrible cup. Takes it, drinks from it, and the knight goes, "You have chosen wisely." So we use that to show that, the right thing isn't always going to look super shiny and pretty, especially for football. Right. It's going to be a lot of dirt, a lot of hard work, and a lot of, tough times. That is one of the clips that we use that, kind of illustrates, hey, this is what we mean when we say this, and we have a real replica of the cup, and it's in our facility. We walk by it. We look at it every day. But it's just,
I think it's, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's great, especially when you talked about you're a program that doesn't have 5-star recruits, right? It's the right mindset for that type of. It's not flashy, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of, there, especially in today's world with you got social media and NIL, and a lot of it is trying to divide. You get a really good player who wants to play, wants to make money, he's going to want to go to where there's just the most opportunity and NIL money. Where I don't know how many guys we have that do NIL. I know how many we have that hang out together, that are connected, that are super tight with each other. Most of us just hang out with each other. It's just
right.
It's just different. It's a different mindset for what we want to do and how we want to go about things.
Right. No, I love it. And that's what I've loved paying attention to what Minnesota is doing, because like you said, yeah. And I just let you talk about that row the boat stuff, because that has to seem, when you work with me and do the coaching, then you hear the row the boat. There's so many similarities there. Just the whole using the metaphors and trying to understand what you're trying to accomplish and how to get there. And I just love that you guys are doing that, and that it's fantastic. So what's the, I don't want to get into coaching here, but what's the mindset moving forward? You got, your little break right now, and then you're getting into what will be your like you have 2 years of eligibility left. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
So,
So,
yeah, I got two more. I'm going to finish my master's. Well, actually, I haven't even started yet. It doesn't start until the fall, but I'm going to go and get that. And then, I have these 2 seasons of football, which, I'd like to do really well in. My goal is to go to the NFL, God willing. But my business plan for either after the NFL or if that ends up not working out is, my education. I picked both of these, and I would like to eventually run a hospital of my own. I've always enjoyed medical things. I'm not very science. I did not like those classes and things like that, so I am not going to be a practitioner, but more of the business side. I really enjoy being around patients, helping people, seeing how you can have an impact on a community and kind of change how people view things. It's always been.
no, and it's been a pleasure to get to coach you and to see you grow and go into this. And you don't be, when you're an offensive lineman, you don't really worry about like the glitz and glamour. It's a trenches type of thing.
I mean, yeah, we enjoy. If there's a film of somebody scoring a touchdown or something, a lot of times we're looking in the background to see what we're doing.
Yeah, right.
It's a lot of fun though. And it's kind of the nature of our position. We're not just one guy. If a running back scores, the running back scored. It's not that obviously the whole team scored, but he's the one who ran the ball into the end zone.
Right.
For the offensive line, it's 5 of us. If one person doesn't make the block, you don't say, well, that guy stinks. You say the whole line stinks.
Right. No, that's fair. Yeah.
So a lot of times the offensive line has been traditionally the most close-knit group on the team. And I just think that's kind of something that comes with being an offensive lineman is you have to be able to work with your whole unit. So one thing our O-line coach says is 5 guys seen through the eyes of one. You want to be able to look all in the same spot. Such as something for our technique, but I mean, it goes back to it's all of us working for one goal together.
Yeah, and I think that, when you talk about your growth and just there's a physical aspect, there's a mental aspect, but then there's also just a relationship aspect that's so important. Like you guys playing as a unit and you have to trust the guy beside you. And it was fun to listen to and fun to watch you grow in that. So last question here, just give me what advice do you have since our question here was about high school athletes coming into college, regardless of the sport, regardless of the position, what advice do you have for incoming freshmen that are making the big jump into, into a college program? It doesn't even have to be a big college program, but what advice do you have for them on their mindset?
Yeah. I have 2 things that stick out the most. So the first one I'll say is annoy your coach. Not just to be disruptive and things like that, but you want to, especially if you want to play, you want to show that you care, right? I am going to talk to my coach as much as possible about things that I need to improve on. Now, you can't just talk about it. You have to also work on it and develop your skills. But, hey, coach, I want to go and watch film. Hey, coach, I did this. How can I fix that? Hey, coach, we had this look in practice. What do I need to do differently here? Hey, coach, can we get together for 5 minutes and talk about ball? You'll develop a relationship, especially if you're spending time working on stuff together. 2, he's going to know that you care and that you want to get better. You want to work on stuff. You want to do things. 3, he'll know that you're dependable. If he is seeing you work on skills that you are not good at, and make those weaknesses into, either normal skill sets or strengths, he's going to know that you're dependable. right? The other piece of advice I would have is when you have time away, take the time away. You guys are going to work. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be at D3 school in the middle of Iowa doing nothing. You're going to work, right? If you have time to go home and see family, go home and see your family, right? You want to spend the time with them, but when you guys go to work, you need to work, right? There's going to be a huge difference that you see as you get older where you can separate your work and your personal lives, where you're not thinking about one while you're doing, if I'm at home with my family, I'm not thinking about football. If I'm at football, I'm not thinking about my family. You have to be able to differentiate and, split your lives up as much as possible and not be thinking about one while you're doing the other.
Yeah. I love both of those. I just jotting notes as you go here. And for the first one, I like to say seek criticism, right? You have to be okay with, not just be okay with receiving criticism, but actually go seek it, right? That's how you get better. And the other one is be intentional. And I loved what you said. Hey, when you're at football, do football. And when you're with your family, with your family. But it's a mindfulness thing. Be very intentional about what you're doing, when you're doing it, and give it your all.
And I think that one is probably the most difficult. Still, I struggle with when I'm not at football, when I'm not actively practice, I struggle with not thinking about it. It's easy for athletes to think about sports as being the only thing that they do in their life, and being able to kind of take a step back. Hey, this is what I do. This isn't who I am, right? You want to be able to be your own person, but still be present when you need to be for both of those.
Yeah. No, I think it's fantastic advice. And, it's been a great, I love talking to you about this. It's been a fantastic conversation. Anything else?
No, I mean, we're going to talk after this anyways.
Yeah.
I know we got a lot more sessions to go through and stuff to work on.
Yeah. Give me, hey, I got you here. Give me a pitch right here. Right. I think that one of my favorite parts about having you as a client here is, like I said, you're 6'7", 310 pounds, offensive lineman for the Big Ten. And I still have, little freshmen in high school that are like, "Oh, I'm too cool to talk about my feelings." Right. And it's funny to me.
Yeah. I think that the more that I have progressed in sport, the more I have realized how much the mind is just as important as physical attributes. Not only understanding what to do, knowing your plays, knowing how to do it, your technique and things like that, but also being under control. Like we talked about the analogy of the bowl earlier, It doesn't work. And that was what I used to think. Oh, that was all I had to do.
Yeah.
It's so much more. There's a lot more thinking without actually focusing on thinking, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. It does to me. And it does for you now, but it's
I hope it makes sense to people who
listen. No, it does. It does. But if you struggle with that sort of thing and you don't understand how your mindset is affecting your play, it doesn't necessarily make sense to you, right?
Yeah.
So
and one of the things that we've talked about in the past is the most frustrating thing is you know what to do, you know how to do it, but you just don't do it and you don't know why.
Yeah.
That is where the mind comes in. And I think that's where you have to focus on, how you're approaching either a practice or a game or every play. You have to be locked in. You can't be going wild.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. I've loved to see your progress, and I'm looking forward to seeing you, the next couple of years and continuing to talk with you. It's been fantastic and been a great interview. I give you kudos for coming on the podcast and being open about this sort of stuff. And it really, it just warms my heart to, this is my passion for doing this. And when I have somebody I help and then they want to come in and talk about it, it's fantastic to me. So thank you so much for jumping on the Mental Mettle podcast. It's been great talking to you, and we will see you soon enough.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite.
You bet. So don't go anywhere. Podcast isn't over. I'm going to take a quick commercial break and come back and do some breakdown on that interview and just some application for athletes and coaches and what we can learn from JJ Guedet. The Mental Mettle Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experienced depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where Mental Mettle coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mettle Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mettle Coaching and see them excel. We are back on the Mental Mettle Podcast, and I told you, right? He is such an impressive, intelligent, driven young man. I just can't say enough good things about him. He was just, being this high school standout and then going to Minnesota at 17 years old, checking into that dorm room. He started grinding, really started putting work in, knowing that he was going to be a redshirt freshman. And then COVID had happened the next year and just threw everything off. Forget about it. And then he started getting a little bit of play time the next year. And then the next year he had that season ending injury. I mean, it's been 4 years for JJ since high school. He hasn't gotten the playtime he's wanted for all sorts of reasons, but he just keeps grinding and is, poised to have his shot the next couple years, which is, again, as I said early on, it's not abnormal for a offensive lineman. You have to become this very knowledgeable, huge man to be able to play at that level, and it's a lot of work. And by the way, in those 4 years, he also went and got his undergrad and is already working on his master's, and I'm sure he'll probably finish that by the time he's done. I can't say enough good things about him. I can't tell you how much I want the best for him, and I just can't wait to see it, what'll happen. I'd wish him luck, but I don't like to wish luck because I don't think he needs it. I think he gets what he gets by working for it, and that's kind of the way we should. And just a point of clarification on the coaching client relationship. Coaching is absolutely a confidential relationship. If you're my client, I don't share information from those sessions with anyone. I don't even tell people you're a client of mine unless you give me your blessing. Some kids are shy about it. It's understandable. It's a little bit of the stigma around mental health, and I get that. They just don't want to share. But others don't care at all. And JJ is definitely the latter. He loves the sessions. And I think I know he does because he said it. He sees them as an extension of some of the work that he already does with the Minnesota team. As he mentioned, the entire team uses a metaphor as one of their guiding principles. If you spend any time or looking into Minnesota football, you will hear the term row the boat. It is their mantra. It's their driving focus. It's similar, and it reminds me a lot of the stuff that I do working with clients. Coaches love metaphors, but this one is something that's used throughout the program. So when I asked JJ if he would share, he was more than happy to. And as I mentioned in the podcast, if I have a 6'7", 310-pound man telling others that mental health is important, let's just say it is a breath of fresh air. And I am indebted to him for him being such a strong proponent and willing to share that he goes through some of this coaching and some of the issues he deals with and how to get over it. It's just again a testament to him and to the family and the way he's in the Guedets and the way he's brought up. And I just love it. There are a few things I really want to reiterate from what he said. Right at the end, he said he had a phrase that I absolutely loved. He told me that coaching had helped him think without focusing on thinking. And, he even said, if you understand what I mean, I don't know. But you know what? I think that if you've played a sport, you know exactly what he means. You've been there. So often, players cannot get out of their own head. They have the ability, they have the intelligence, they have the drive, but yet they still can't perform. They overthink. And overthinking leads to worry. And worry can lead to anxiety, and anxiety can lead to other serious mental issues, even depression and things like that. And it may just be athletics I'm talking about, but it's more than that. Anytime a person cannot perform up to their abilities, it can just kill their confidence and cause issues. Personally, my confidence and ego were just absolutely shot when I couldn't speak correctly. And it wasn't my fault, and it was understandable, but that didn't really help knowing that. I had to readjust my mindset and it took practice and it took effort. And that's why I enjoy helping athletes adjust theirs. And it honestly gives me some of the empathy I need to be able to do that so well. I also loved what he said about seeking criticism and being intentional. Those are huge things that I brought up and use with athletes all the time. And it's such a mature answer. It really embodies the growth mindset. If you haven't ever read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, you should. Absolutely. It's a phenomenal book. I outline it some and use it in my online course, both the one for parents and the one for coaches. It's that important to me, and it's just a phenomenal book. If you're able to operate with a growth mindset, it allows you to reach your full potential rather than, if you've got a fixed mindset, it means that you often peak early and you give up. One of the main ideas from the book is seeking criticism to use it for your advantage. Those with a fixed mindset run from criticism. They don't want to hear it. Those that seek it, then they know what they need to work on, and they see it as a challenge and they go after it. And they know that mastery in a field only comes from effort. But he also mentioned that when he works, and when he takes time off, he takes time off. And that's there's a lot of people that put effort in, but then they have trouble shutting it off. I know that's an issue for me sometimes, but when he talks about being able to be mindful and focus on your current situation, that is a skill that goes well beyond something that's needed for D1 athletes. I think that's something we all need to be able to do a little bit more, is some mindfulness. I could go on and on about JJ and about that interview. There's so much to digest there, but I only have so much time. But that said, if you have any questions about the mental performance coaching that I do for athletes, or any questions about anything that JJ said or mentioned, don't hesitate to send me an email, reach out. I am here to help. I got into this business to help athletes and coaches, and hearing from those coaches and athletes really helps me understand more about what I can help and what I can do. So don't be afraid to hit me up and let me know. I appreciate you all. This is Coach Matt Toman, and this has been the Mental Mettle Podcast.